Hello, and thank you for joining us on excerpts from our family store walking tour. In the early 2000s, my colleague Jan Schockett and I decided that we needed to document Asheville's Jewish history before descendants of the families were gone. And this became the Family Store, a history of Jewish businesses in Asheville from 1880 to 1990. At first it was an exhibit which we put into the store windows around downtown, and then it became a book, a walking tour, and an archive. So in our research we documented over 450 Jewish businesses. Don't worry, we're not going to see them all today, but we're going to reveal some of the things that you can still see when you come to downtown Asheville. The first Jews to come to Asheville that we can document came during the Civil War. They came on a stagecoach, and it was the Lipinskys and the Whitlocks, and they also came to open businesses, retail businesses in the downtown. It wasn't until 1880, when the railroad came, that Jews were able to get here in larger numbers, though still very small. And they came for three reasons. The first reason was that immigrants would follow the rail lines, and this coincided with the Eastern European migration. The second reason they came was their health, primarily tuberculosis. Doctors would say if anyone had a respiratory ailment, they had to go to the mountains and breathe the clean mountain air. The third reason people came was what we call family chains. So you would write home to your brother or your cousin and you would say, I need help in my business, or come, it's beautiful here, you'll make a living. We're leaving Pack Square now and heading south on South Main Street, which today is called Biltmore Avenue. This was the heart of the Jewish businesses in the 1880s to about the 1920s. On the left side of the street, every building had a Jewish-owned business in it between Pack Square and Eagle Street. On the other side, you had Palais Royal and today Adler Court, named for the Adlers who had an Army-Navy store here. From Biltmore Avenue, we're making a left onto Eagle Street and going into the area that was formerly called the Block. So here we are on the Block. This was traditionally the African American Business District. Behind me is the YMI, the Young Men's Institute, which was built in 1892 to be a center, an anchor of this community, and also to house the African American workers who were helping to build the Biltmore House and the Biltmore Estate. But just because this was the African American Business District didn't mean that every business owner was African American. There were many Jewish business owners here. The Michaloves had a grocery store down here in the early 1900s, which they lived in. The Feldmans had a grocery store here up until the 1960s. Jewish merchants had a different relationship with their African American customers than Southerners. First of all, they treated them like customers. They were allowed to try on clothes. They gave them credit, things that they could not get in other businesses. From Eagle Street, we're heading north on South Market Street back to Pack Square. Perched above the city, halfway up Bowcatcher Mountain, is the Sky Club. It started as a mansion, but Gus Adler purchased it in the 1930s, and it became the old Heidelberg restaurant. Gus was from Heidelberg, Germany. And he and his wife, Emma, ran the restaurant. In the 1930s, it was the old Heidelberg, and then World War II started. And there was a lot of anti-German feeling here, so they renamed it the Sky Club. It was a place to socialize. And much of the Jewish community would socialize there because the synagogues were small. They weren't, comfortable for a lot of socializing. So they would go up there. Here is Asheville's City Hall, built in the 1920s by architect Douglas Ellington, who studied at the L'École des Beaux-Arts. Jewishly, we've had 3 Jewish mayors. The first, Ken Michaelov, in the 1990s. His family came here in the 1890s, and so he was born and raised in Asheville. Our second Jewish mayor was Lenny Sitnick. She was, I call her the Bubby Mayor. She was also the first woman mayor of Asheville. Our current mayor is Esther Mannheimer, and she came here as a teenager. Her father, Ron Mannheimer, was the first head of the Center for Creative Retirement, which today is known as OLLI. And Esther met her husband when he was a lifeguard at the JCC. Before we walk down North Market Street, let's take a look at the Black Mountain College Museum on College Street. In 1933, a few professors from Rollins College got together and founded Black Mountain College in Black Mountain. They wanted a college with no grades, and everything was based on art. Coincidentally, in 1933, Hitler closes the Bauhaus in Germany. This is the great school of design. Well, a way to get out of Germany is to have a job in another country. So the faculty of Black Mountain College were emigres from the Bauhaus, and half of them were Jewish. We're leaving Pack Square and walking down North Market Street. We're coming into the neighborhood where Mrs. Wolf's boarding house, my old Kentucky home, is, and across the street from that was Beth HaTefillah's first building, and down the block was the first building of Bicker Cholim. We'll also talk about Harry Bloomberg's gas station, Asheville Community Theater, and Sprinza Weisenblatt. So here we are in front of Asheville Community Theater. It was started in the 1940s, and the first thing they did was send a board member to New York and say, bring back someone that's going to put Asheville Community Theater on the map. And he comes back with Charlton and Lydia Heston. But over the years, Asheville Community Theater has had many people from the Jewish community involved with it, both as board members and acting in the various plays. Not all Jews were in the retail, and Sprinza Weisenblatt was one of the more professional ones. She was one of the early women doctors here in Asheville. She came here in 1928 on the invitation of a doctor who was working here. She had been studying at a prestigious eye institute in Vienna. So first of all, we have to think about what she had to overcome to even be in that situation. She was a woman, she was very poor, and she was Jewish, but she was very brilliant. And so when she came here, she saw no color barriers. She would take her patients in the order in which they arrived, when the norm was to take the white patients first and make the African American patients wait. This was Harry's gas station, and Harry Bloomberg was born in 1904. He was the youngest of 5 children, and they lived in this neighborhood, very near the Wolfs. Harry was a high school dropout. His father told him he had wheels in his head. His principal told him, go back to school. You'll never amount to anything. but he didn't listen. And his motto was, treat your employees and customers fairly and give back to your community. Harry always had an interest in cars. After his gas station, he opened 2 motor inns, and in the 1930s, he got the Cadillac LaSalle dealership, which in those days, a Cadillac was the best car you could drive. So if anyone famous came to town, he got to drive them around. That was President Roosevelt and Bob Hope, people like that. Harry bought Biltmore Industries from Fred Seeley and established a car museum of antique cars, and also a museum to the homespun, which was the kind of fabric that Biltmore Industries made. Here we are in the backyard of my old Kentucky home, the boarding house of Julia Wolfe. Harry, whose gas station was right next door, wanted to build a motor inn. A motor inn being not a place for people to stay, but a place to park your ragtop cars and have them detailed. Well, he grew up in this neighborhood and he knew Mrs. Wolfe. Mrs. Wolfe was all too glad to have a piece of real estate in her backyard, thinking Harry would go bankrupt and she would get a great building. That's not what happened. The Wolfes went bankrupt and Harry had to buy the property from the bank in order to get his motor inn back. But he wasn't interested in the Wolfe house, so he sold that back to the Wolfes. We're leaving North Market Street now and walking across East Walnut towards Broadway. Before we head north on Broadway, let's take a look at the alley that has a tribute wall to Black Mountain College. Here we're looking at a photo of the Black Mountain College campus in Black Mountain. You can see it's very idyllic. There's a lake, there's mountains, and a mid-century modern building. Breuer and Gropius were there. Over here you see Buckminster Fuller. He put up his first geodesic dome at Black Mountain College, and then he came back the next year and built a better one. Also, Einstein paid a visit in the Summer Institute to Black Mountain College. So it was anybody who was anybody knew about Black Mountain College. Harry Finkelstein came to Asheville in 1903 and opened up a pawn shop. The pawn shop was the poor man's bank, the ATM of its time. Thomas Wolfe mentions Harry Finkelstein in Look Homeward Angel as Mr. Teitelbaum, who has golden nuggets of teeth and speaks with a Yiddish accent. The Chandlers were a typical immigrant family. They came to Asheville in the early 1900s, and they lived above a store. They hemmed handkerchiefs and rolled cigars. When Urban Renewal took his business, his son Aaron opened up Chandler's Pickle Barrel in this location, which had been a former Pure Oil gas station, and his wife opened up a hobby store in the same building. As we walk north on Broadway, we'll see Asheville Showcase, the Moog Museum, and the Masonic Temple. Here we are on North Broadway in front of Mr. Equipped. He was part of Asheville Showcase. Now, Leon Rockamora came to Asheville in 1918, and in 1935 he came home on Friday and he was dead by Sunday. His wife and 2 teenage sons were left with the restaurant supply business. Few women were in this business in the 1930s. Fan Rockamora had to go to the Bowery in New York City, a very dangerous place, to get her merchandise. Today, the business is still going. It's not in the family anymore. And the 2 teenage sons, we've just lost them. Leon was 100 and Bill was 97. Here we are on North Broadway, and right across from Asheville Showcase is the Moogseum. Robert Moog came to Asheville in the 1970s. He's known as the father of commercial electronic music. He developed the Moog synthesizer. Many famous groups have used his synthesizer, including the Beatles and Prince. He's buried in the Lou Pollock Cemetery of Congregation Beth Israel. His wife, Ileana Grams, was the early director of the Center for Jewish Studies at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. Here we are in front of the Masonic Temple on North Broadway. The lodge was founded in 1848, and this building was constructed in 1913. Being a Mason for Jews was a way to assimilate. Rabbi Fox of Biker Cholim, an immigrant rabbi from the old country, was a Mason. And when he got run over crossing Merriman Avenue, he had a Masonic funeral. From the Masonic Temple, we'll walk west on Woodfin Street to Lexington Avenue and to Chicken Alley. Woodfin Street is now the north boundary to downtown since the interstate was built. Here we are in Chicken Alley. It's off of Woodfin Street between Lexington and Broadway. This is where the farmers would bring the chickens, and there would be several butchers here to slaughter them. One of them was Jake Rosen, who had served in the Russian army and came to Asheville in the early 1900s to join his brother Max in the produce business. But eventually he had his own business and he was a shachet, so he could slaughter kosher chickens. Keeping kosher was a difficult decision for the Orthodox. The meat had to come from far away, and refrigeration was not always good, and it was very expensive. Here we are on North Lexington, and although this is a new store, in the past, this was Bessie Rosen's grocery store. Jake was up above slaughtering the chickens, and Bessie had a grocery store. It became the largest grocery store on Lexington Avenue, and she had the first walk-in cooler. It closed during World War II because there wasn't enough labor or enough men to do the deliveries. Here we are on North Lexington Avenue going south. This was the blue-collar shopping district where the factory workers would shop at stores like the Dollar Store and the Bargain Barn. But in those days, these were mom-and-pop stores, not chain stores. Here we are in front of the Vanderbilt Shirt Company. No relation to the Vanderbilt. It was started by 3 Jewish guys who came home after World War II. They had no idea how to make shirts. They were very forward-thinking and cared about their employees. So when they noticed that so many of their employees were missing front teeth due to poor nutrition, they hired a health department nurse to come and teach them better nutrition. Here we are in front of Tops for Shoes. The Resnikovs came to Asheville in 1950 because Izzy Goldstein told his friend, "Come to Asheville, you'll make a living." So Tops is in its 3rd generation of being family owned. It was one of the few businesses that in the 1970s and 80s, when businesses wanted to move to the malls, they didn't move. How could they compete with the shoe stores in the mall? Well, they had a much larger variety of sizes, and they had something that we often forget today, which is customer service. We'll cross College Street and continue south to Patton Avenue. Here we are on Patton Avenue. Businesses grew from around Pack Square, up North Main Street, down South Main Street, and then as we got closer to the 1920s, down Patton Avenue. So as businesses grew, or I should say as downtown grew, businesses started to migrate down Patton Avenue. Here we have a picture of Patton Avenue in the 1940s. On the corner of Lexington and Patton was the Mann Store. The Mann Store was run by Coleman Zager. Coleman Zager believed in tikkun olam. If you live in a place, it is your responsibility to make it a better place. And he worked with a committee of people to get the University of North Carolina to take over Asheville Biltmore College. And that's how we got University of North Carolina, Asheville. So there were other Jewish businesses on this street also. And back here you'll see Pollock's. Over here was the Hollywood store. And on the corner back there was Fields. Just a short distance down Patton Avenue is the S&W cafeteria. So here we are in front of the S&W cafeteria, and it was a very important location to the Jewish community. At lunchtime, Jewish business people would gather here. On Thursday nights, it was Maids' Night Out, and families would come. They would show movies upstairs for the kids so the parents could socialize downstairs. But it was also a time of anti-Semitism. This was the 30s, and Hadassah and B'nai B'rith and other Jewish organizations would meet upstairs at the S&W, but they would have to post a guard in front of the door to make sure that everybody was safe. In 1931, a screenwriter from Hollywood named William Dudley Pelley shows up in Asheville, the self-proclaimed American Hitler. He comes with his silver shirts and his printing press, and he even tries to start a college. Needless to say, the Jewish community didn't like him here, but neither did the community as a whole. So they colluded and railroaded him out of town on securities fraud, and President Roosevelt eventually caught up with him and put him in jail for subversion to the government. So we don't make this stuff up. We're heading north on Haywood Street. This was the Fifth Avenue of shopping. The Flatiron Building, near the corner of Haywood and Battery Park, had a radio station on the top of it, WWNC, which stood for Wonderful Western North Carolina. And on Saturday evenings in the 1960s, Rabbi Unger would have an interfaith radio program on that station. That was Winter's department store. Harry Winter, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, bought the store in the 1940s, and the first thing he did was take out the colored and white water fountains and put in one water fountain. He was also the first merchant to put an African American mannequin in his window. In the 60s, Harry went around to the other department store owners and convinced them that the right thing to do was to hire African American sales clerks all on the same day to avoid boycotting, and that's exactly what happened. Solomon Lipinski was a visionary who brought modern shopping practices to Asheville. He came here on a stagecoach in the 1870s, and by 1890, he and his half-sister opened up a small dry goods store on South Main Street, which today is Biltmore Avenue, and they called it Bon Marché, modeled after the grand Bon Marché department store of Paris. These were people with aspirations. As the business prospered, they had a saying, go west with success. And that meant that as your business prospered, you moved from South Main Street to Patton Avenue and then to Haywood Street. And that's how the Bon Marché moved around town. So here we have BM for Bon Marché. After Grove died, the new owners of the fancy Bon Marché building there wanted to have a chain department store. So they moved an Ivy's into that location, and the Bon Marché moved here across the street. It opened a second location at the mall, at the Westgate Mall, and that meant that you could dress more casually. If you came shopping downtown, you wore your best clothes, you wore white gloves, you got all dressed up. But if you went shopping at the Westgate, you didn't need to get fancy, you could just go in your plain clothes. So that was the draw, plus there was parking. Here we are at St. Lawrence Basilica. Even here there's a Jewish connection. Rabbi Sidney Unger, who did a lot of interfaith work, donated a plaque in memory of his good friend Monsignor Bors. Hope you've enjoyed our tour of downtown Asheville. Come down here and look for yourself for the names that you can still see on the buildings, the clues that still reveal the Jewish history here. Now we're heading north toward the two synagogues, Beth HaTefillah and Beth Israel, the JCC, UNCA Asheville, and the cemeteries. Here we are in front of Congregation Beth HaTefillah, the first congregation to be formed in Asheville in 1891. Its first building was in downtown in 1902, and in 1909 it became a Reform congregation. When Rabbi Unger came in the 1940s, he said, "You brought me here to be your rabbi, but you need to give me the tools to do it." And after 25 years of planning for a new temple, in 1949, a new building was erected. A year after that, a new Hebrew school building was erected, which no longer exists. Today, the Hebrew school is folded into the new renovation of the building. Beth HaTefillah established their cemetery the same year they established their congregation in 1891. While it took 10 Jews for a minyan, it only took one dead Jew to form a cemetery. And with all the people coming here for their health issues, it was important to have a place for Jews to be able to be buried in the traditions of their religion. There was a debate early on whether the cemetery land should be purchased for $500 in Riverside Cemetery or out in Chun's Cove for $250. But practicality and convenience won out. This is Congregation Beth Israel. It was formed in 1899 as the Orthodox congregation Bikur Cholim. By 1916, they were able to build their first sanctuary, which unfortunately burned down the night before Rosh Hashanah. So it wasn't until 1924 that they could rebuild it. They moved into this building in 1969. They had their first service. In 1950, they changed their name from Bikur Cholim to Beth Israel. And today they are a conservative, independent congregation. In 1916, the little congregation of Bikur Cholim, which was started in 1899, was finally able to establish their own cemetery, which later became the Lou Pollack Memorial Cemetery, named after Lou Pollack while he was still alive. Frank Silverman came along and he said he wanted a place where his son could socialize with other Jewish youth. And so he donated some money. And this is how the JCC was born. It was the coming together of comfort and family and familiarity that brought the Jewish community together. And every person in the Jewish community donated money so that they could have a JCC. By 1938, Asheville had 2 synagogues, but 1 Jewish community. and a group of people got together and said, we need a JCC. The old house served as the JCC until 1993, when they built this new building. And more recently, it's had a major renovation and added an all-year-round swimming pool. Here we are at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, which was started in the 20s but moved to its current campus in the 1960s. Here, 6 buildings, a track, and a room at Ollie are named for members of the Jewish community who gave their service, their money, and felt that the value of education was so important that they wanted to increase the access for other people. Here we are on the campus of University of North Carolina, Asheville, in front of Ramsey Library, which houses the university's special collections. Within the special collections is our Jewish collection, Jewish Life in Western North Carolina, which includes archives from the temple and the synagogue, as well as the Center for Jewish Studies, which is a liaison organization between the community and the university and provides visiting lecturers and programs for both the community and the university. Thank you for coming along with us today. We hope you've gotten a little taste of Asheville's Jewish history. If you'd like more information, we have A Home in Shalomville book, which includes businesses and people outside of the downtown. It's available at the Asheville JCC online or in person, as well as at the Asheville Visitors Center and Malaprop's bookstore. Hope to see you soon.
Who knew that Asheville had this much Jewish history? It's amazing.